President Trump wrote a letter to Congress about his strike on Syria after he did it. Now, he's supposed to do it before, and actually, if you want to be really technical about it and follow the law, he's supposed to get approval through them. Didn't do it, didn't even consider it, didn't write him a letter beforehand. It was an afterthought. Checks and balances, separation of powers. What are you going to do? Forget about it. So he wrote them a letter after the fact. I want to read it for you here. Then I want to break down just how much it's packed with bullshit. So it says, Dear Mr. Speaker, at approximately 8:40 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time on April 6, 2017, at my direction, United States military forces in the Mediterranean Sea, operating beyond the territorial sea of any state, struck the Shayrat military airfield in Syria. United States intelligence indicates that Syrian military forces operating from this airfield were responsible for the chemical weapons attack on Syrian civilians in southern Idlib province, Syria, that occurred on April 4th. I directed this action in order to degrade the Syrian military's ability to conduct further chemical weapons attacks and to dissuade the Syrian regime from using or proliferating chemical weapons, thereby promoting the stability of the region and averting a worsening of the region's current humanitarian catastrophe. I acted in the vital national security and foreign policy interests of the United States pursuant to my constitutional authority to conduct foreign relations, and as Commander-in-Chief and Chief Executive, the United States will take additional action as necessary and appropriate to further its important national interests. Okay, where do I begin with all the bullshit in here? So, I mean, the main argument is, chemical weapons! Humanitarian crisis! I do say! All right, you know who else uses chemical weapons? White phosphorus. Israel does. You know what happened when they used it going a few years back now? We sat there and we watched it. They broadcasted it live on CNN. Nobody said, chemical weapons! Bringing instability and violating the humanitarian order. Human rights. We got to go to regime change. It's time for regime change in Israel. Let's go. Nobody said that. They literally played it on CNN, and Wolf Blitzer did play-by-play. There you go. I see the white phosphorus being dumped on civilians in Gaza. Isn't that interesting? You know who else uses chemical weapons? We do. We do. We use it in Iraq. Didn't we? Well, I think it was in Fallujah, right? I mean, obviously, if you want to go back, Vietnam, Agent Orange, napalm. I mean, this depleted uranium tips. We just used it. It just occurred to me now because we did the story about a few months ago, but it popped out of my head. Now it's back in there. We used depleted uranium tips on our weapons in, wait for it, Syria. We just did. This is, when we were fighting ISIS in Syria. Now, obviously, Trump said, yeah, enough with ISIS, even though Trump argued, we're going to take out ISIS first. Now he's attacking the Assad regime, the other people who are fighting ISIS. But we used depleted uranium on the rebels, on ISIS in Syria. Weird. So we use chemical weapons. Israel uses chemical weapons. Saudi Arabia uses them and is using them right now in Yemen. We're giving them cluster bombs, which violate international law. We've given them white phosphorus, given them sarin. So we use chemical weapons. Our allies use chemical weapons. We use them and our allies use them to slaughter civilians. In fact, Yemen, Saudi Arabia is blockading them and 17 million people are going hungry. They're starving to death as a result of the blockade that we back. They have our support. We arm them. They're our buddies. They're our allies. So we're violating the same international norms and laws. And they'll say, Syria, chemical weapons in Syria. By the way, don't know if you guys know this, Assad turned over his chemical weapons. He did it about 2 years ago. You remember there was a whole hoopla over it? The media, nobody even mentioned this in the media this time around. Weird. You would think that the media, if their job is to fact find and give you facts, they would say, interesting, it seems that Assad turned over his chemical weapons 2 years ago. Strange, so now he did a chemical weapons attack? When he basically already won the war, he did a gratuitous chemical attack on civilians when he doesn't even have chemical weapons anymore. Strange how that works, isn't it? You had John Kerry and a Russian official in a meeting, and the Russian official said, what can Assad do to not get attacked by America? Because this was when the first red line was drawn, and Obama looked like he may attack Assad. And John Kerry was like, I guess he could turn over all of his chemical weapons, but I don't think that's going to happen. And then, like, the next day, Assad's like, yeah, anyway, here's all my chemical weapons. I give up. I give them up. Here, take them. So strange how now the U.S. is clutching their pearls. Oh, chemical weapons! Oh, this is so sad. How dare they? Only we're allowed to use them, and Israel and Saudi and anybody who's already on our team. If you're not on our team and you're aligned with Russia and Iran like Syria is, well, then we're going to, beat the war drums. It really is amazing. Okay, then he says, this is the most amazing line in the whole thing. I acted in the vital national security interest of the United States. Don, you can't just say that. Those words have meaning. I know in your mind there's no meaning, but those words have meaning. I acted in the vital national security interest of the United States. You know what that means? So that means you're doing self-defense, defense of the nation. Like, oh my God, guys, look out. Assad is about to attack Kentucky. Quick, scramble the fighter jets. Nobody believes that. Nobody believes that because it's a heaping load of horse shit. Assad is not about to attack the United States. That is mental. And again, nobody could believe that. You could be the most hawkish person on the planet, and, you'd have to come to the realization, hey, maybe Assad is a threat to some of his people. Certainly ain't to us. So this is what we're talking about now. This is the standard. That, hey, I don't know. They did something bad, maybe not. Even though we do stuff that's bad all the time. Our allies do stuff that's bad all the time. But that makes them ripe for regime change. Are we ripe for regime change after using chemical weapons like we do all the time? If Iran decided to come in here and say, you know what, we're just going to topple the U.S. government and install, a leader that we like, how would we feel about that? You can never... Rule number one of U.S. foreign policy is don't even try to be objective in your standards. Don't try to apply the law equally and care about international law equally. Because once you do that, the whole facade is blown up. Because the main claim of everybody in power in the U.S. is, no, those rules don't apply to us. We're above that. Us and our allies, we get to do what we want, and you don't get to ever say it's a violation of international law or it makes us ripe for regime change. Is Israel ripe for regime change after they use chemical weapons? Saudi Arabia, how about them? They're not only are they a threat to civilians in Yemen and massacring civilians in Yemen and starving them to death, they're a threat to their own people because of how theocratic they are. Nope, they're our allies, don't say anything. So, but Assad, oh my God, Assad, we got to get rid of Assad. Even though, by the way, 60% at least of the rebels that he's fighting, jihadists and Islamists. So he's fighting ISIS, he's fighting Al-Qaeda, he's fighting their offshoots. Oh, God, no, terrible, Assad. The rebels were also accused of using chemical weapons in Syria. You got anything to say about that, Don? Or, neocons in the deep state who are controlling our foreign policy? You have anything to say about that? Nothing, huh? Even though they were accused of using the same goddamn chemical weapons. No, when they do it, it's cool now. So this is, the deep state, the neocons controlling Trump. They have his ear. They swayed him. And it's the saddest fucking thing ever. Because we're going to get to his quotes in a little bit, what he said about Syria back when Obama was considering going in. And man, it's a whole new level of hypocrisy. They need a new word to describe it because it's just, the word hypocrisy doesn't encapsulate it enough. It doesn't have the punch in the word that's necessary. But, take your shitty argument for a hike, son. Attacking Assad, the Syrian government, was in the vital national security of the United States. My ass cheeks. You could say you hate him. You can say he's a humanitarian, he represents a humanitarian crisis. But so do we, so do our allies, so do other states that nobody gives a fuck about. South Sudan is starving to death right now. There's fighting in the Congo. There's fighting in Mali. Nobody say, oh, we got to invade. No, it just always happens to be in a region of the world that's a vital region that us and our allies want control over, that all of a sudden we start beating the war drums. Oh, we got to go in there, even though there's a million other problems, a million other places in the world. Ignore all those, focus on the one that just by chance would happen to help us geopolitically in this giant international struggle between us and Russia for more power. So the neocons have fully latched onto Trump, and he's now falling for their every argument. They sweet-talked his fucking pants off. I know that's a gross visual, but you know exactly what I'm saying. So there you have it. They're now arguing. The U.S. is now arguing, oh, we care so much about humanitarian crises. Even though we just did an illegal war that killed minimum 200,000 civilians and we're bombing 7 different countries illegally right now. We humanitarian crisis. We care about altruism. We're the world police. So we're going to go in there because it's in the vital national security interest of the United States. We just got word that West Virginia was about to be invaded by Assad, so we had to attack. Only suckers are for this new front in the war in Syria that we opened up.